Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Gopi Chanda Pallava Giribharatari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Nitya Vishnu Prabhupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Asto Tarsata Śrīmad His Divine Grace of Bhaktivedanta Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBD Founder-Acharya Save the whole world Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Prabhupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Asto Tarsata Śrīmad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur and music of all Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Sadigaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki. Braj Bhumi Shivan Dama Dama Ki. Navadip Mayapur Dama Ki. Pushtam Chitra Jagannath Puri Dama Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulasi Maharani Ki. Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki. Jai Nitai Go Premanandi. Oh, glorious to some of the devotees, oh, glorious to some devotees, oh, glorious to some devotees, oh, glorious to the devotees, Shri Guru and Shri Garanga, oh, glorious to Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhogena Punyam Kushalena Papam Bhogena Punya Kushalena Papam Bhogena Punyam Kushalena Papam Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Bhogena Punyam Kushalena Papam Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Kirtim Vishudham Sura Loka Gitam Kirtim Vishudam Suraloka Gitam Kirtim Vishudam Suraloka Gitam Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha Kirtim Vishudam Suraloka Gitam Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha Bhogena Punyam Kushalena Papam Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Kirtim Vishudam Suraloka Gitam Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha Bhogena Punyam Kushalena Papam Kalevaram Kalajavena Hitva Kirtim Vishudam Suraloka Gitam Vitaya Mam Esyasi Mukta Bandha
Bhogena punyam kushalena papam
Bhogena, by feelings of material happiness. Punyam, pious activities or their results. Kushalena, by acting piously. And in parenthesis, devotional service is the best of all pious activities. Papam, all kinds of reactions to impious activities. Kalevaram, the material body. Kalajavena, by the most powerful time factor. Hitva, giving up. Kirtim, reputation. Vishuddham, transcendental or fully purified. Suralokagitam, praised even in the heavenly planets. Vitaya, spreading all through the universe. Mam, unto me. Eshasi, you will come back. Mukta bandha, being liberated from all bondage. So this is quite an extraordinary verse, actually. So these words are so full of meaning. Each one of these words, I mean, if I was at the caliber of some of, of our advanced Vaishnavas, I could give a class on each one of these words. Even like Bhogena, the feelings of material happiness, the way that the Lord explains how Prahlad is going to experience material happiness, or, he talks about, where's this one in particular? This Kala Javena, the most powerful time factor, because he talks about how the time factor, nothing else is going to cause you to die, just the time factor, and so that in itself is a very, very powerful statement. So, yeah, quite an extraordinary verse, this one, actually. My dear Prahlad, while you are in this material world, you will exhaust all the reactions of pious activities by feelings of happiness. And by acting piously, you will neutralize impious activity. Because of the powerful time factor, you will give up your body, but the glories of your activities will be sung in the upper planetary systems, and being fully freed from all bondage, you will return home back to Godhead. Responsively, my dear Prahlad, while you are in this material world, you will exhaust all the reactions of pious activity by feeling happiness, and by acting piously, you will neutralize impious activity. Because of the powerful time factor, you will give up your body. But the glories of your activities will be sung in the upper planetary systems. And being fully freed from all bondage, you will return home, back to Godhead. Can you get me a Bhagavad Gita, please? So this verse is quite amazing, because reading this, I thought Prahlad Maharaj was a Nityasiddha, isn't it? And here he's saying, you know, by feeling happiness, you're going to exhaust all your pious credit, and by acting piously, you're going to overcome all your impious credit. Quite interesting, isn't it? At least I think it's interesting. And so, anyhow, Prabhupada talks about the purport. I just want to mark a few verses here I want to speak from. This is Prabhupada's purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Evam praladasyangsena sadhana siddhatvam siddhatvam cha naradvijajgeyam. There are two classes of devotees, the sadhana siddha and the nitya siddha. So we know what a sadhana siddha is, yeah? What's a sadhana siddha? Huh? Perfection through practice, exactly. And then what's the Nitya Siddha? Eternally perfected. Yeah. Okay. The next statement is just like, what? Prahlad Maharaj is a mixed Siddha. That is, he is perfect partly because of executing devotional service and partly because of eternal perfection. Thus he is compared to such devotees as Narada. Formerly, Narada Muni was the son of a maidservant, and therefore in his next birth he attained perfection, sadhana siddha, because of having executed devotional service. Yet he is also a nitya siddha because he never forgets the personality of Godhead. The word kushalena is very important. One should live in the material world very expertly. The material world is known as the world of duality because one sometimes has to act impiously and sometimes has to act piously. Although one does not want to act impiously, the world is so fashioned that there is always danger. Padam padam yad vipadam. Thus, even when performing devotional service, a devotee has to create many enemies. Prahlad Maharaj himself had experience of this, for even his father became his enemy. A devotee should expertly manage to think always of the Supreme Lord so that the reactions of suffering cannot touch him. This is the expert management of papa punya, pious and impious activities. An exalted devotee like Prahlad Maharaj is Jivan Mukta. He is liberated even in this very life in the material body. Excuse me. Okay. So here we see in this verse that Prabhupada, but Nrsimha is making some seemingly contradictory statements because he previously we've seen in earlier on in this chapter, Prahlad Maharaj has said that you've asked me to come down here to demonstrate how to perform bhakti. So this is indicating that he's a nitya siddha. It's not indicating, it's actually stating he's a nitya siddha devotee because he's descended for a particular purpose. Now we see that Nrsimha is saying, while you're in this material world, you will exhaust the reactions of pious activity by feeling of happiness. And by acting piously, you will neutralize impious activity. So there's quite a few things going on here in this statement. And this is one of the things I find very profound when we're discussing Sanskrit, is each statement in Sanskrit has many, many understandings, many, many different interpretations, and you can and that's why Prabhupada would say we're not interested in A, B, C, D translation. This means this means this, therefore it means that. There's a really interesting story in this regard. I think it was Ramanujacharya, was it? His guru, his Kula guru at the time, was explaining a particular passage from one of the scriptures, and he was just giving this ABDC translation, and basically the translation was saying that it was comparing the face of the Lord to the backside of a monkey. Saying that the reddish cheeks of the Lord are like the backside of a particular type of monkey. And so this is just an ABCD translation. He doesn't have realization, therefore he's unqualified to explain. And this is why for us, as devotees of Krishna, the commentaries of the Acharyas are very, very important. Because there's many things that are described in the scriptures that, on our own capacity, we would not be able to understand. Even you look at, an important work such as the Bhagavad Gita, so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Even famous people like Mahatma Gandhi has given his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and he's basically indicating it's all an allegorical story. That, Kurukshetra refers to the body, the Pandavas refer to the senses and different things like this. But actually, the Pandavas existed. Kurukshetra is a real place. Krishna is a real person. And the Battle of Kurukshetra actually took place. And Prabhupada, when he first came to America, he was giving classes on the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, basically he was pointing out that all these translations of the Bhagavad Gita, these 700 translations, give or take a few, and their commentaries were all useless. Why? Because not one pure devotee has resulted from all this work. They're all just speculators. And this is why the devotional process, we don't make up our own conclusions, not just in philosophy, but in the practice as well. We don't concoct our own conclusion. We don't, develop our own process or anything like that, because, we were talking about this in our deity worship class the other day, is that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he pointed out, in the Vedas there are only 3 topics: Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. So Sambandha means relationship, but not just relationship with God, it means your relationship with the material world, it means your relationship with everyone else, it means where you are. So we have Sambandha, and then we have Abhidheya, which means the process, the means, this anartha nivritti, the means by which you become purified. And you have Prayojana. And if you look at the Prayojana of each different Vaishnava Sampradaya, they have a different Prayojana. Therefore, they have a different Abhidheya. So our Acharyas have given us a very specific Abhidheya, a very specific process or practice to follow in order to achieve that specific conclusion. If you follow another practice, you will get a different conclusion. This is one of the reasons in deity ministry that I've been very eager to encourage devotees not to follow practices of other sampradayas, because they will give you a different conclusion. We follow His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He knew our mind. He knows our nature. And therefore, He gave a specific practice so we can achieve this particular conclusion, that there's love of Krishna, or love of Radha and Krishna in a particular mood, a particular relationship. And He showed us how to achieve that. And we start that through the process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Because if we don't follow Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, we will not achieve Raganuga Sadhana, but we will not achieve Prem. You just won't go there. you'll wind up, usually what happens is people become sahajas when they start to manufacture their own process. And we've been having a conversation about this recently, amongst other devotees here, and how the tendency in the practice of bhakti is devotees speculate, especially from their influences from the past. It's not such a problem for, like a person like myself coming from an Australian background. I have no experience of bhakti. I have no experience of, religious activities except going to church. But for those of you who grew up in the Indian subcontinent, it's a very different experience. And practically every village has got their own devata. And there's all these different processes of worship, you see. And that can be quite challenging for someone to overcome those influences. But we see that, it's pointed out in the Mahabharata, it says, Mahajani yeni gata sapanta. If we, it was the Tako Pratishta Shrutayo Vipinna, Nasho Yasha Rishi Matam Vabinnam, Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam, Mahajani yeni gata sapanta. This is Dharmasya Tattva, the truth of Dharma. Dharmasya Nihitam Guhayam. So Guha means like a cave. Yeah? So the secret, this tattva, it's like a secret which is deep in the heart of the Mahajans. But through following the path chalked out by the Mahajans, you can actually understand this secret. Yeah? But if we make our own process, you're not going to understand anything. You're not going to understand anything at all. And that's why, we see in deity worship and other elements of devotional service that there are many in the leadership of ISKCON who are very keen to see that we follow what Prabhupada gave us. Because knowing that if we follow what Prabhupada gave us, we will achieve the destination. But if we come up with our own process, it's doubtful where we're going to go. So the point here is like many of these points that are being brought out in this verse are difficult to understand. But without the commentaries of the Acharyas, it's very hard to understand the point here. And so we see, like, one of the initial points that's being made here, at least what I see, is that Nrsimha is saying straight up that without being completely pure, and often we equate this being pure with meaning like, impurities or impiety, impious things. But Nrsimha is saying completely free from pious and impious result. You need to and then naturally you'll go back to Godhead. And there's two nice verses in the Bhagavad Gita that this brings to mind. There's one in the 4th chapter, Vitaraga Bhayakroda Mamaya Mam Pashata Putama Bhagavanta. I can't remember the whole verse, but I don't recite or remind myself of these slokas often enough. Being free from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So being free from attachment, being free from fear, anger, and being fully absorbed in the Lord. So this is the point that Nrsimha is making here to Prahlad, is you have to be freed from all the reactions of pious activity, but also the reactions of impious. All this stuff has to be gone completely. Yeah, and then in the 7th chapter, there's a few verses I thought which were particularly relevant here, and so first in 7:25, Lord Krishna says, "I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and inexhaustible." And this is quite applicable here in this situation because Hiranyakashipu was right in front of Nrsimha, and he didn't recognize who he was. We see also Kurukshetra, that Krishna was right there on the battlefield, and most of the people didn't recognize who he was. Right in front of him, Duryodhana, when Krishna went to the court of the Kauravas to try to avert the war before the war happened, he went as a peace envoy to try to avert the war. And we see that Duryodhana Shishupal and others, not Shishupal, sorry, Sakuni, they plotted to capture Krishna. They plotted they were going to capture him because he's the life and soul of the Pandavas, and without Krishna, the Pandavas are finished. How did that work out for them? Not so well. Not so well. They didn't capture Krishna at all. But then Bhishma got to see Krishna's universal form, so he was very happy with it. And Bhishma tried to convince, Duryodhana that this won't work out well for you. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh, no, he's just some joker, he's just some magician, They just didn't take him seriously. And what's that Naham Prakasha Savasha, Yoga Maya, the foolish, they're bewildered by material nature. They'll never understand my nature. They can't. Even if Krishna's right in front of them, even if Krishna's doing something like lifting Govardhan Hill, which is not an easy thing to do. To lift a mountain and hold it aloft with the pinky of your little hand for 7 days. The little pinky of left hand for 7 days. Who can, Tip of his pinky, yeah, for 7 days. Who can do that? Oh, it's just some magic, it's just mythology. Yeah, even though Krishna's right in front of them, they can't accept it. And then Krishna says, I know everything that's happened in the past, all that's happening in the present, and all things are yet to come. I also know all living entities, yet me no one knows. So Krishna's, explaining his nature. I know everything, past, present, future. I know everyone, but no one knows me. Then he goes on to say, O conquer the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So the point, same thing here, is the Lord's talking about this world of duality. This is the situation we're in, is duality. There's pious, there's impious, there's love, there's hate, there's happiness, there's stress, there's heat, there's cold. Everything about this material world is dual. And then he goes on, the verse that's particularly interesting in relation to this. He says, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, a similar point is being made here to Prahlad, is that they've acted piously, so that they've lived out their piety, that they've exhausted their piety. And this is also, Gopa Brindeshwar was quoting this verse yesterday, this from Kunti. Janmaishvaya Shrutasi Edamana Madampana Navahati Abhitatdun by Twama Kinchana Gochara. That these persons who are Kinchana Gochara, meaning that they have no, Prabhupada translates as materially exhausted, but it doesn't mean they've kind of just finished running a race and they're exhausted. It means they have no interest, they have nothing left to attract them or to bind them to this material world. Everything material's gone. And it's just like, yesterday we were visiting my wife and I were visiting some older friends and relatives and stuff like that. And it's kind of interesting to see the difference between devotees when they get older and non-devotees when they get older. Devotees when they get older, the tendency is to just get to the point where I'm done with this. I've had enough. I have no interest in anything in this material world. Whereas you see like sometimes, not always, but sometimes with non-devotees when they get older, they still have this strong burning desire to enjoy this material world. But this is because they don't have knowledge. They don't, sometimes they become frustrated, but generally that frustration is because the senses aren't cooperating with the desire to enjoy. They're unable to enjoy because the body's spent. But still there's a strong desire to enjoy this material world. But a devotee especially devotees who study this philosophy, they can understand that I'm done with this material world. There's nothing left here. There's nothing here of value for me. The only thing of any value is Krishna. And this we see that in the next verse, Nrsimha makes this point. And I think also on this point he's making, just focus on service to me. And that's what we need to do. It's like, yes, we overcome pious and impious desires by, pious, well, not just desires, but the result of pious activity by, enjoying this material world. And not necessarily going out and seeking sense gratification, but piety results in this mode of goodness. It results in a sense of happiness, of satisfaction. And that's what Nrsimha is saying to Prahlad. Be satisfied in this world. Don't be in anxiety. He's saying, you're going to enjoy as the king of the Daityas for the lifetime of the Manu. So be happy. Even though he's saying, oh, well, the king of the Daityas, this is such an inauspicious thing. He's just saying, be happy. That's the result of his piety. You can't be happy. There's only two types of people in this world who are happy. Someone who's pious and someone who's stupid. A fool will be happy in any circumstance. You can see them. They're intoxicated, they're lying in the gut or whatever, and they think they're happy. But actually, it's the most abominable situation. But someone who's actually pious is happy in this world. They're peaceful in this world because of their pious activity. And then he's saying here, to burn up all your impiety by doing pious acts. And this again will further his happiness in this material world. So then in the Gita, Krishna is making this similar point. And then he goes on, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. Those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So Krishna is giving us, clear guidance, on how to overcome the influence of material nature. Nrsimha is saying the same thing here. The way to overcome the influence of material nature is through ultimately being absorbed in Krishna, just dedicating your life and activities to the service of Krishna. And so it's very, very powerful. And then Prabhupada, one of the things I found a little bit perplexing in the purport, I made a few notes of this, is how Prabhupada says that Prahlad Maharaj is a mixed siddha. I don't completely understand this, so I'm going to be asking a few senior Vaishnavas questions. And where he gets that from is if you look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comments on this verse, I've got it here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. It should be understood that Prahlad, like Narada and others, was partly sadhana siddha and partly nitya siddha. That's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. And then Prabhupada here, he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there are two classes of devotees, the sadhana siddha and the nitya siddha. Prahlad Maharaj is a mixed siddha. That is, he is perfect partly because of his executing devotional service and partly because of eternal perfection. And so, some of the things that this brings to my mind is firstly, when we're, our tendency is we want to put everything in a box. This person's a nitya siddha, that's there. This person's a sadhana siddha. This person's a kripa siddha. We'd like to compartmentalize everything. Especially with male minds, that's the nature of a male mind. Female mind tends to see the connection of everything to everything, whereas males don't see it like that. No, this fits in that box, this fits in that box. I'm dealing with this box here, I'm not worried about the one right now. Whereas ladies will see how everything is connected. And for guys, it's really complicated sometimes. Cannot see how that is connected to this. So this here also, when we look at things like siddhas, we tend to want to say, okay, this one's a sadhana siddha, this one's a nitya siddha, this one's a kripa siddha. And the idea that it can be mixed like that is a little bit unusual. So this helps us to understand the nature of spirituality it's not like, compartmentalized like we'd like to try to see everything in the material world. The nature of spiritual life and spirituality is it's all very fluid. It changes. It's like at one time one person can be a sadhana siddha, they could be a nitya siddha. It's not like it's fixed. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Another thing that comes to mind is that it's part of the pastime. Just like we see with Narad Muni. Narad Muni is eternally perfected. You know, when the creation winds up, he enters back into the body of the Lord, and then when the creation unwinds, he comes back out as Narad Muni every time that happens. But he goes through various pastimes, you know, of perfecting himself, like we see it's described in the Bhagavatam, how he was living as the son of a maidservant, and he got the opportunity to serve the Bhagavatas, and he took the remnants with their permission, he took their prasad remnants, and then after that his mother was bitten by a snake, and she died, and he left that place, and he went on his path of perfection, and he became perfected through the process. You know, he saw the Lord told him how to practice bhakti, and he became perfected. So this also is, in my way, a partial understanding of what Prabhupada means here by a mixed siddha. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but I don't understand more than that. You know, so it's a very, very interesting statement. You know, and and the main point is like, whatever the case, whether he's sadhana siddha or nitya siddha or kripa siddha or whatever, he's siddha. That's what matters. You know, and the thing is, like, you know, if you've got $1 million, right? If someone gives you $1 million, you earn $1 million, you inherit $1 million, what does it matter? You've got $1 million. Who cares how you got it? As long as you didn't steal it. You know? So in the same way, you go back to Godhead, it doesn't really matter. How, you know, no one's going to be asking you, well, how did you get back here? You know, it's like sometimes, you know, like you get these questions. It's like, you know, devotees, when you're visiting other countries, they'll ask where you're from, or who's your guru, as if it matters. You know, you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're following the regulative principles, you're studying Prabhupada's books, you're making advancement in devotional service. What does it matter who? It matters to you, but what does it matter to them? You know, it doesn't really matter what country you're from. You know, it doesn't matter. You're a devotee of Krishna. So these things are all, you know, material considerations. How you got there. It's like Prabhupada, he compares it to the sheep and the hole philosophy. You know, it's like the sheep, they're down in the hole and they're all looking up and wondering how they got here. But is that important? How you fell in the hole or how you got down in the hole? Does that matter? No. What's important is how to get out of the hole. You know, so. Doesn't matter how you get back to Godhead. The point is, get back to Godhead. Yeah. Prabhupada sometimes he would say by hook or by crook, get back to Godhead. Yeah. So it's very, very important. Yeah, and we see here, and this is part of what I see as the pastime element, and with this verse here, how Nrsimha is saying, you know, like burn up your pious activities by being happy. Destroy your impious credit by pious activity. So Prahlad is a nitya siddha. Nrsimha is teaching the process of bhakti through the nitya siddha devotee. And this was revealed to us a few verses ago, how Prahlad, he's saying, you've asked me to come here to teach the path of bhakti. And we'll see this in the lives of, you know, I think I mentioned this the other day, in the lives of all these great Vaishnavas, is how Krishna uses them. Just like with Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev is such a stellar example of this, of how Lord Krishna uses Nrsimha to teach the path of devotional service and also to glorify his devotee. And we see here also with Prahlad, you know, so many calamities he was exposed to, yet he didn't see them as calamity, and in all circumstances he was just absorbed in remembering the Lord. Gopa Brindeshwar was describing the different calamities that he was subjected to, but he wasn't affected by them. He didn't see them as calamities, and at no point did he forget Krishna. And this is his glory. At no point did he forget Krishna, no matter what happened. And you see, there's a similarity in the lives of all great devotees. We see in the life of Prabhupada, he faced so many difficulties in life. He was gored by a bull, he was injured in a car accident. So many challenges he faced. Yet at no point did he forget Krishna. He had a heart attack, strokes and heart attacks and stuff. At no point did he forget Krishna. So it's very, very glorious. And then another thing that in this verse, I'll just finish on this, that in the second paragraph, Prabhupada says the word kushalena is very important. One should live in the material world very expertly. What does that mean? We should become expert at enjoying the material world. We should become expert at manipulating the material nature. No, he's not telling us to become good materialists. That's definitely not what's going on. There's two interesting statements this brings to mind. That Prabhupada, there's one place he says that, what is it? We are in the world, but not of the world. Yeah? So we have to, this is being expert. We have to understand our nature. Jivera Surupahoy Krishnera Nitidas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Bed Prakash. That, that we're an eternal servant of Krishna and we're a manifestation simultaneously different, but not different from the Lord. Tatasta. Yeah? And then another, so it means, we're here in this material world, but this is not where we're from. We're servants of Krishna. We're eternal servants of Krishna. Our nature is eternally spiritual. We are not material. The body may be material, but that's not us. It's just a covering. And then the other interesting statement that Prabhupada made, which I think is a very, very profound statement in many ways, and it can give us many understandings, is in this material world you have to learn the art of how to catch a fish without getting wet. Yeah? So learn the art of how to function in this material world without being affected by this material world. That's the challenge. And in my personal reading, I've just finished reading the section where Kardama Muni gets married to Devahuti, and they spend 100 years of the Devatas traveling around in this aerial mansion, and they're enjoying sex like anything. I mean, it's really describes quite, vividly how much they're enjoying. Yet still, Kardama Muni is not affected by it. It gives you an understanding of how great a personality he is, that he's enjoying like anything with his wife, and very, very beautiful. And he manifests himself in 9 different forms so they can enjoy like that. And still, he's not affected by it. Still, he remembers Krishna. And still at the end of it, when he says, okay, now I'm going to go to the forest. I've given you the daughters, I've given you what you wanted, I'm going to the forest now. She says, oh, but one thing, I need enlightenment. Having the daughters is okay, but I don't want to just be left rotting in this material world, so you need to give me enlightenment. Give me a son who can enlighten me. So then he impregnates her with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Huh? Yes. What did I say? Did I? Kardama Muni, yeah. And so he impregnates Devahuti with Kapila. Now, if he wasn't pure, how could he do that? So we see a very, very good example of being in the world but not of the world. Functioning according to what you have to, function according to your guna and karma, do your duty in the world, but don't be affected by the world. Be very expert. Learn what it is your nature and your duty, what you're supposed to do, and act in this world. Don't become contaminated by this world, and then return back to Godhead as quickly as you can. It's a very, very interesting instruction. Okay, that's about all I have to say. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said about this idea of a mixed siddha, but I don't understand much more than that. Any comments or questions? Yes, bro.
Hare Krishna, thank you for a wonderful class. As you mentioned that it's not a ABC translation, it's a realized translation by our Acharya. So What happened in realized state? Is it like Acharya is become? I'm just speculating. Like few options coming, and I would like you to enlighten. One is like he becomes very erudite in the study of Shastra, and that way he is able to get into the internal meaning of the word. Or another thing is that the Lord comes in front of him and then dictates him that this is the true translation of it. So what is this? How it happens?
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with erudition. You know what I mean? I've been to programs where children recite whole chapters of Bhagavad Gita. You know, I've seen cockatoos that chant Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You know, but if the cat, Prabhupada says that you can teach a cockatoo to chant Hare Krishna, but if the cat comes and grabs him by the neck, what does he do? You know, it's just, and this is a really important point. There's, you know, that verse, this Janmaishvarya Shrutasi. So there's this was Abhidatum by. Kunti says Abhidatum. So Abhidatum means feeling. So you see, Prahlad, you know, he's got feeling. He's got feeling for the Lord. It's not just like some external, you know, practice, and we see that often. Is people will come to ISKCON and they will officially practice bhakti, but where's the feeling? Where's the conviction that Krishna is my Lord and Master? You see here that in all circumstances, you know, like Prahlad's not calling out, please save my body, you know, I've got so much enjoyment and stuff. No, he's just constantly absorbed, you know, Krishna's my Lord, Krishna's my Master, he's my only Savior, he's the only one I have any interest in. He's not even calling out to the Lord to save him, but he's so absorbed in these feelings, these loving feelings for the Lord. Without feeling, it's not going to have any effect. You have to have somehow or other. We have to awaken this spark of love, and that's the talent of the preacher. I was reading a purport the other day. Prabhupada was talking. They see this spark in the heart of the living entity, and they fan this because it's there. It was that Jivera Sarupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas. No, that's not. Kararai. What's that verse? Kararai Dai. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhakavadai Savadana Siddha Kararai. So this Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, this eternal perfection of love of Godhead, it's in the heart. It doesn't come from somewhere else. It's not like someone can touch you on the head and zap, you've got Krishna Prem. It doesn't work like that. It's there in the heart because we are all eternal servants of Krishna. That's who we are. We're not something different. But it's only when we arouse this emotion, this loving relationship with Krishna, which has many, many manifestations from the point of Shraddha to Prem. And there's so many manifestations in between that. But it's only when we arouse that this eternal perfection in the heart starts to come out. This Karayodaya, it's awoken. You know? So someone can be very, very expert at Sanskrit and translating words and stuff like that. And you see in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, when he went to Varanasi and he was discussing with Prakashananda Saraswati and all these Mayavadi sannyasis, they're very, very expert. Or, you know, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, a wonderful story. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he meets Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sees this young sannyasi and he's worried, well, you know, he's going to get himself in trouble because he's very beautiful, he's young, you know, the women are going to be attracted to him. He looks very sensuous, so he's very, very concerned about that. And he said, you know, I want to teach you Vedanta. And Chaitanya was okay, you know, just because out of respect for a senior, he agreed to it. And then so he sat down. I can't remember how many days it was. He just sat down for 7 or 8 days and listened to Vedanta and didn't say anything. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked him. He says, I've been speaking to you for all these days and you haven't said anything. Don't you understand Vedanta? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I understand Vedanta perfectly, but I haven't understood a word of what you said. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was quite taken aback by that. Mahaprabhu was very respectful. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said about explaining to him what Vedanta actually meant. And so one can be very expert and be able to recite so many scriptures and this and that. But if that feeling's not there in the heart, it's all just words.
It's like a charger with no electricity.
Sorry?
It's like a charger with no power. It's like a charger with no power.
Yeah, like flat battery. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the expertise, and that can only come through parampara. It's only, it's only when you receive. It's just like we were talking the other day about mantras. A mantra is only effective when you've received it from somebody else. You can go to there's different bazaars in Vrindavan. You get recordings of practically any mantra you want. I mean, I can give you the sannyas gayatri, or the sannyas mantra. It's not a gayatri, but it's a sannyas mantra. It's just one of the verses from the Bhagavatam. It's nothing fancy. But it doesn't make you a sannyasi. Why? Because I'm not authorized. I can give you Gayatri mantra. Doesn't make you a Brahmin because I'm not authorized. So the point is one has to come in an authorized disciplic succession. One has to be empowered. And there's a nice verse there that Prabhupada would quote regularly in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Shakti Vinanahi Tarata Pravatan. That when one has that Shakti of Krishna, then they're empowered to preach. And anyone can be empowered to preach. You don't need to be someone special. All you have to do is just take shelter of Krishna, and then he empowers us. And it's the same with translating. It's like there are so many people in ISKCON, or not just in ISKCON, but there's so many people translating books. But are they empowered to translate? Prabhupada was empowered to translate. And all you have to do is just look at how many books he translated in the period of time he translated, and the fact that he was traveling the globe constantly. He was giving classes every single day, and he was answering letters every single day, and he was meeting with so many disciples every single day. And he translated 70 volumes of books with elaborate commentaries. He was empowered. There's no doubt of that. Some people say he's Shaktavesh, some people say it was a vibhuti of Krishna. I don't know. But it's definitely he was empowered by Krishna to do that. That's not an ordinary thing. So in order to, and you look at all the different acharyas that have been there, in order to present this knowledge in a way that is meaningful, they have to have this feeling, and they have to be empowered by Krishna to do it. You can't just study Sanskrit and think you're going to be able to become an acharya or this and that. There has to be a connection with Krishna. Otherwise it doesn't work. Mahatma Ji, you're eager to say something.
Hare Krishna, Nrsimha Prabhu. Thank you very much for a wonderful class.
Thank you for your friendship.
And as you said, in Hindi they say, Bazaar se nikla hoon, kharidar nahi hoon. That means I am going through the market, but I have nothing to purchase in this material world. Only love for Krishna. That is the only thing which we have to concentrate upon. So in this connection, I want to know how to concentrate on the lotus feet of Krishna, so that you absorb completely in the lotus feet of Krishna, and then your life becomes nitya siddha.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways, but primarily, I mean, deity worship is very important for that. There's an interesting lecture Prabhupada gave in Paris in probably 1974. And he said that the purpose of deity worship is to fix your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, I'm asking why there are no ankle bells. So the way I take this to mean is the deity should be decorated very, very beautifully. Not simply, but very beautifully. So why? To attract our minds to Krishna. That's the purpose of deity worship, is to attract your mind, to attract your heart, to attract your senses to Krishna. Because otherwise, what will happen is there's so, I mean, just go out there in the material world and see, there's so many things vying for our attention, and the materialists are very expert at presenting things and packaging things in a way to attract your senses. So we need to be more expert at packaging Krishna consciousness in a way to attract
Yeah.
our senses and the senses of others. Yeah? So deity worship is very, very effective, but also very, very powerful means of attracting and purifying the senses is the holy name. By the holy name, by chanting the holy name, this is Cheto Dapara Majja, the heart becomes purified. When the heart becomes purified, naturally your consciousness is drawn to Krishna. That's just natural, a natural consequence. It's just like a young boy is naturally drawn to a young girl. It's just a natural thing. He doesn't have to think about it. The child is naturally drawn to the mother. The child doesn't think about it. It's just a natural thing. It's because why? Because it's the intrinsic nature of the self. So that's the intrinsic nature of all living entities. As I said before, Jivera Sarupa Hoy. This is who we are. We're all servants of Krishna. But because we're covered by material conditioning, and ultimately the material conditioning means this avidya means I think this body's me. So the way to get rid of that is through the process of sadhana. Sadhana bhakti, it destroys the anarthas, it destroys the conditioning. It reveals the true nature of who we are. And that true nature, my mind's attracted to Krishna. My mind wants to take shelter of his lotus feet.
So what you're saying is deity worship and chanting the holy name.
Sadhana bhakti.
Sadhana bhakti.
Yeah, 9 processes of bhakti. But deity worship is very helpful in this age. Very, very helpful. But that can just mean for people like you and me just coming to take darshan.
And third thing, the association of the devotees.
Definitely, that's also part. Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavat Shavan, Mathura Vasa Śrīmad Bhāgavatam.
Prabhupada books.
Yeah, same. It's all part of the same thing. The process of sadhana is about purifying our consciousness, purifying our senses, so we can
Concentrate.
Because all these things, there's that verse in the was it from Padma Purana, I think. Smata vyasatadam vishmatapna sarvinisya sedisho etioriya vikinkara. That the two regulative principles are always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. The rules and regulations simply serve these principles. So the rules and regulations help us to always remember Krishna, never forget him.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sevika, you have a question? Over this side.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhu, you mentioned how a devotee is happy because of the past piety he has accrued. But we see past piety also is diminishing through time.
Sorry?
The past piety we've got from our previous life is also diminishing as time goes. But Prabhu, we also hear in lectures that for devotees, happiness is everlasting. So, is this because of devotional service or because of our past life?
Everlasting happiness means bhakti. Susukam kartamavyayam, as it says in the beginning of the 9th chapter. The process of bhakti is everlasting and is joyful performed. So this is the nature of bhakti. And it's the nature of the soul as well. But it's only through our material conditioning that we become distressed. Because of the influence of material nature, we become distressed. Of course, we see in the pastimes of Krishna, the residents of Vrindavan, they're also experiencing distress, but that's something completely different. That's spiritual ecstasy. Because that distress causes them to become more and more absorbed in Krishna. They take more and more shelter of Krishna. But what we're experiencing in this material world is a very different thing. If we're lucky, it causes us to take shelter of Krishna. But generally speaking, we try to take shelter of ourselves and try to overcome these external circumstances by our own capacity. But actually, the only shelter we have, and this is one thing that's really coming out of these pastimes with Prahlad Maharaj, is he accepted 100%, 110%, if you like, that there is no other shelter in this world than Krishna. We're not at that point yet. Whenever some calamity comes, either we want to resist, we want to fight back, or we try to take shelter of, as Prahlad Maharaj says, what's this? These fallible soldiers, the family, the country, the friends. They can't save us. No one else can save you but Krishna. Because, see, our thought of saving us means saving the body. Why? So I can enjoy some more. That's what we think saving means. But saving means that I'm always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Because what does Kunti say? What's that verse? Really nice verse. That when I think of you, I no longer have to fear repeated birth and death. She says, Vipata shantata karo bhavato darshanam yasa apurna bhavadarshanam. So she's praying, let the calamities come again and again. And I don't know any devotees who pray like that. I don't know anyone who prays like that. Just let the calamities come again and again. You like that idea? No, of course not, because we want to enjoy in this material world. Because she's understanding that the calamities are an impetus to take shelter of Krishna. And when she takes shelter, when she's thinking, when she's constant, because that's where she experiences happiness, is when she's always thinking of Krishna, she's happy. When she stops thinking of Krishna, she's unhappy. And it's the same for us. If we can always be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, we won't know calamity. And then we don't have to worry about repeated birth and death. Did that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, last question. Okay, one comment.
Yes, what you mentioned about how you need to have the verse explained by a pure devotee. You can't it's hard to just read the verse and understand it. And what happened just now, we're reading a verse and it says how that you do bad activities and get bad karma, and you do some good activities and get good karma, and that will neutralize it. And I was just thinking, well, that's not, if you do materially impious activities, you get bad karma. If you do materially pious activities, you get good karma, which you don't want any karmas. But so it's interesting, Prabhupada explained in the verse there, the pious activities was doing Sravanam, remembering Krishna, and so the sort of pious activities in the mode of pure goodness actually does remove karma, like when you chant Hare Krishna, that removes karma, and the pious activity was doing was remembering Krishna, and that Sravanam, that will remove karma. But so when I read the verse, I thought, how does this work? Because good activities gives you good karma, and so.
But sometimes you'll see that Prabhupada uses different terms in different ways. Just like sometimes he'll talk about Sudha Sattva. Sometimes you'll say Sudha Sattva is material, sometimes you'll say it's transcendental. And same with piety or pious activities. Sometimes he'll say that pious activities are material and they're useless. Other times he'll equate pious activities with devotional service. So you just need to look at the context he's using it. And here he's using the context of devotional service is the ultimate pious activity. So in that sense he's talking about it being pious activity, but it's actually beyond pious activities because it destroys all material piety. So there's material and there's spiritual. That's the way I'd say it. It's just material and spiritual. Yeah? Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hare Hare Gaur. Hare Krishna.